What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke. We're here on the road in the Airbnb. It's actually pretty nice. Don't have the best backdrop here. This is the office that we've got, but gonna break down everything you need to know for this week. And I do have a dinner reservation, so we're gonna keep this as quick as we can. Got to get out there at like 8:30. So get all your questions down in chat. Welcome on in, everybody, to the live stream. We'll go over everything from the golf course perspective. I walked the course today, have a lot of knowledge for you guys. Then we're going to go through DFS and the prop boards for you and all of the questions that you've got. So welcome on in. Hopefully everyone's having a fantastic start to their Wednesday evening. We've got ourselves a little Crown and Coke. We're going out for some steak dinner tonight, and then of course, getting this weekend started. So looking forward to it. We got David down in chat, James Romanowski, Nick, and Marco. Welcome on in. You guys are early to the party. Love to see it. David says, last two in a single entry pick, one twosome. So will he Z or Kirk or Keegan and Scotty? I'd go with the you're saying Keegan, Scotty, or Thurston. So it's a two. You're confusing me there, man. You have a set of three, a set of two, and a set of two. So I don't know. You're confusing me there. You got to word that a little bit better. James says, good evening. What's going on, man? Some good old love. Nick says, going to be clever as a fox this week. See what you did there. I do like Ryan Fox. What's going on, Marco? He says, back to the Crown and Cokes. That is correct. Why not? We're on the road. Real easy drink to make, and definitely my go-to if I'm just looking to sip on a little something. So let's go ahead and go through this golf course, which today, guys, looked pretty much like your usual API. The rough wasn't too gnarly. I mean, last year it was a little bit more gnarly than what we're used to, but this year closer to the 3 inches that it's typically cut at. And in terms of your firmness of your fairways and your greens, the fairways looked pretty typical. They were actually maybe a little bit more receptive this year than what we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years, but the greens, extra crunchy. So while the fairways might be a little bit easier to hit, I think that the greens this year are going to be a little bit harder to, especially on some of those longer iron shots. All of the par threes, of course, are well over 200 yards. And then most of those longer par fours, you're having something at least 175 yards and in. And with how firm the greens are, those are going to be pretty tough to hit. So in terms of your green and regulation percentage, it might be a little bit lower this year than what you're used to seeing. And then compared to last year's tournament, I do think that the fairways might be slightly easier to hit. So that would be the main thing that I noticed. Again, the rough length wasn't that gnarly, but one thing that they did last year, and I would expect to be consistent here in 2023, is the fact that they're not going to cut that, right? They're going to leave it at that 3-inch mark. Then it's going to grow up to something like 4, maybe even 4.5 inches by the end of the week. In terms of, your scoring average for Thursday, I think it's going to look a lot different than what we're going to see here on Friday. So if you haven't already been well exposed to the weather forecast, we're going to see it gets extremely dicey there on Friday, and then even on Saturday too. So on Thursday, you have your usual split, I would say, right? Morning wave looks a little bit easier than the afternoon. The wind gusts and the sustained winds climb there towards right around midday, right? 1, 2 p.m. They get to their apex. And then when you look there on Friday, you'll see that they're in for your good old carnage, right? Winds of 20, 30 miles an hour, 30 mile an hour wind gusts right around midday. And while I've seen a lot of people around the industry talking about potentially targeting guys playing early on Friday, they're still playing in wind. They're still going to have 9 to 10 miles an hour of sustained winds. And then from the wind gust perspective, sure, they're 5 to 10 miles an hour lower, but it's not like you're looking at a calm morning versus carnage in the afternoon, right? You're not going to see a 2.5 shot difference. In my opinion, you're looking at maybe like a half a stroke to maybe a stroke difference between the two waves. So while I think that targeting the guys that are going to be playing PM, AM, so PM on Thursday and then AM on Friday might be a slight advantage, I don't think it's as big advantage as some people are making it out to be. If it's a half stroke to a stroke advantage, sure, down low, if you have guys that are relatively close in terms of projection, take the guy that's lower owned, right? Take the guy that's playing in the PM AM wave. But if you're going after guys at the top of the board, and you're telling me that you get like a half stroke difference between, let's say, like a John Rahm and Rory, as opposed to Scotty that's playing in the AM PM, I don't think that means that you have to just fade Scotty Scheffler. Like, just to give you an example up top. So we'll talk through some of the strategy when it goes to handling the weather. But if you're playing 150 lineups, I think it's a little bit different than if you're only playing, like, let's say 1 to 20 lineups. If you're playing 1 to 20, you might still want to take plenty of guys from the AM wave. If you're going with the 150 max approach, now that's where you can start to play this kind of advantage, right? maybe you take 15, 20% of your entire portfolio and you stack each wave. And now I think that the stack to go after is probably the PM AM stack, going after the guys that are going to be in the quote unquote advantageous wave. I've heard a few people even mention going after the AM PM wave. I'd guard against that, right? I mean, I see a slight advantage towards the guys going off late tomorrow, but nothing drastic. And I think that if you're going after the AM PM wave, you're just hoping, right? You're hoping that the round ends up getting suspended, that somehow, right, the wins there that are projected on Saturday don't come through. I think that's wishful thinking at best. So if you're going to go after any stacks, I would recommend going after the PM AM. But in my personal player pool, my set of 150, I'm looking at stacking about 10, 20% of my lineups at most. And those 10, 20% are almost all going to start with a Rory McIlroy, as you would expect, right? Playing in that wave, somebody that was already a part of my core player pool. But I don't want that to be half or even all of my lineups, particularly because I have such a wide set. And we've seen it time and time again. Guys like JT, right, at the Players Championship, PGA Championship last year, break the mold, go out there, still end up getting you that top end performance. So while maybe a 4-2 stack or a 5-1 stack might get the job done this week, I would guard against going after all those 6-0s. So let's go ahead. Let me go ahead, start sharing my projections, and we'll catch up on chat. So from the golf course perspective, I don't think there's that much to hone in on. I do think that if you're trying to go after props, you might want to be looking at some unders for greens and regulation. But let's see what's going on down there, boys. I'm sure a bunch of you are already filing in now. You're ready for some carnage? Absolutely, me too. What's going on, Robert? What's going on, Todd? Says, any thoughts on Laird for a cheap play? You're looking for ball strikers this week. You're looking for guys with experience. So I think he's got a shot, Todd. He's probably not my favorite option, right? He's not somebody I'm going to go out there and tout tonight. But if you have him in your lineups, Todd, I'm not going to talk you off of it. He's got the ball striking component for sure. What's going on? George says, got you some Heaven Hill bourbon here tonight. Cheers. Cheers. Yeah, I've got the cheap stuff over here, but I just picked up a bottle from my house, just threw it in the backpack and headed up here. Didn't have time to stop at the liquor store. So I brought something with me, just got some Coke there at the golf course and brought it home. When we have a little bit more time later, perhaps we'll make a stop, right? Get some bourbon or something like that. But just making do with what we've got here. Nick says, of the players you watched today and who looked the best and who looked the worst? You can't use Spieth. So yeah, the guy that looked the best was Jordan Spieth. So the reason I say that is he had a drive 380 on hole number 6. And you know that Bryce and Roy line where people take it the whole way over the bay there in 6? He took that line and he cleared it easily. So that's why Nick says not to mention Spieth. Who looked the worst? Trey Molnax. Trey Molnax was using a Theragun in between holes. He looks like he was having some sort of issue with his upper back, and he missed every green that I saw. On top of that, and I almost don't want to mention this, but I will, Jon Rahm looked horrible on the range. And I don't mean like kind of was hitting the ball bad. I mean was missing every single shot to the point where I could tell he was trying to hit a fade to a pin that was like 175 yards out. He missed left, I think 7-8 times in a row, and then immediately smashed his bucket full of balls. So you guys know you have the range bucket out there, right? He literally pile drived it into the ground. All the balls went everywhere. I gasped. A few people around me gasped because they were watching him as well. And the next shot that he hit, you think that maybe he would try and calm himself. He started hitting duck draws on purpose. He purposely aimed at the right side of the range and started drawing it onto the pin. And guess what? He hit the green, hitting it with the duck draw. And he moved it like 60 yards from right to left. So I don't know if that was him just raging, him going, well, I can't hit the fade. I might as well just go out there and hit the draw. He left the range 30 seconds later. So I have no idea what to take from that, other than the fact that his caddy was still walking around the putting green. He disappeared. Like Jon Rahm, he disappeared into nowhere, essentially. I couldn't see where he went. His caddy was still walking around the putting green, chatting up other golfers. He told Aaron Baddeley, he's like, I'll see you on the weekend. So I don't think he's that worried about Jon Rahm's game, right? He told Aaron Baddeley he'd see him on the weekend there. But seeing him smash the bucket of range balls is enough to make me fade him this week. So we have our projections up here. You can see I'm not playing them, right? I need a reason to fade somebody up top. And seeing somebody rage on the driving range, I don't know, right? When you're choosing between him, Scotty, and Rory McIlroy, it's enough for me. So I'm not saying to fade him this week. We've seen guys that have had bad range sessions go out there just 30 minutes later, right? Even the morning of, go out there and still absolutely smash. But I don't know. It was something to see. I noticed that. And Nick, great question there. He was definitely the one that was the worst. If I had to give you somebody other than Spieth that looked good, I would say Davis Riley. Davis Riley was hitting a bunch of drivers. He only hit like 4 or 5 irons and then moved on to the driver. So I think he was relatively I don't know, like satisfied with how he was hitting the irons. The driver was going a long way too. It's hard to say what kind of shot shape he was going for, but was hitting the draw almost every single time, and it looked consistent. So that's what we'll say. We got some high quality H2O with some Mio energy. Cheers. Hey, I like it. Hey, Mio energy. That's the shit you need before you make some lineups. So I'm all about it. My screen just went black. Hopefully you guys can still see me over here and you can still hear me and everything. I'm on my laptop, which is like 8 years old over here trying to do these live streams. And to say that it's given me some technical difficulties would be like an understatement and a half. Before we went live here, I ended up having to restart my computer like 4 times. So hopefully that didn't mess things up and you can still hear me. Joseph says, how was the week, Luke? Also, who do you think has a greater top 5 potential, Finau or Billy Ho? Definitely Finau. I don't think that one's particularly close, but the week was a lot of fun and looking forward to this week too, because we'll be on site. I'm going to go out there early tomorrow morning. I plan on leaving the course right around like 1, 2 p.m. It's looking like it's going to be 90 degrees out there. So because Jordan Spieth is going off early, a few other guys that I plan on playing this week, I'm going to go out there, watch the action while it's a little bit cool in the morning, and then probably take it easy in the afternoon. So thanks for asking, Joseph. Hopefully you're having a great start to your weekend. Love all the slappies that are full fading AM, PM. Should give you some nice ownership on Chef Zally M. Agree. Yeah, I think that you should be favoring the guys in the PM, AM, but like you said, you shouldn't be full fading it. So hopefully we get some lower ownership numbers. Robbie says, I know not to follow a good rounded showdown, but what about guys following a good tournament? Yeah, I mean, even if you want to follow a good round, right, I'm okay with it, but just don't do it when the guys make it chalky, right? So for this week, right, Cole's not going to be that chalky. Lingworth, Brem, right, not getting that much ownership. So if you want to tail those performances, then fine, right? But Chris Kirk, right, it's looking like he's going to be a little bit chalky this week. So I'd be a little bit more hesitant there, Robbie, but it's all dependent on ownership. If the people are going to be, about where they should be in terms of ownership, coming off of a solid week, then they're great plays. But if they're going to be 2-3 times the ownership where they should be, then you might want to consider the fade. But great question. Curious on your thoughts on PGA changes. I hate them. I absolutely hate the changes. No cuts for elevated events is the most, I almost said a bad thing, one of the worst things I think I've ever seen in my entire life. You are essentially making it a glorified live event at that point. You're looking at taking away the competitive juice on a lot of these top end events. You're not going to let guys like an Eric Cole have an opportunity to go out there and break through. And even some of the rookies, I mean, think about it this way. And I think the rookies are just getting absolutely shafted here to get into these top tier events. And if they're going to make it like the top 70 that are getting into all of these events, as a rookie, out of your first 4 or 5 starts in the fall swing, you have to finish top 10. And at least one of them, let alone probably finishing top 10 2 or 3 times to get the status, to get that reshuffling and get into those events. Let's say you start a little bit cool. Let's say that Taylor Montgomery, right, didn't have the start to the season that he had. Well, he wouldn't be playing in those events. And do we think that's fair? Absolutely not. So I hate it. I just have to say it there, Todd. I think it's ridiculous. It's one of the worst changes I've ever seen the tour make, ever. And that's saying something. They've done some stupid stuff. Pins dropped. Okay, we'll take a look at those. James says, thoughts on Ann, Cole, or Shelton? I think you're a week late on Ann or Cole, right? I played them last week, took advantage of those. Robbie Shelton, maybe a better pick. I actually saw him hitting on the driving range today. Looked pretty good. Not my favorite. You cannot talk you on Spieth again. Try as you might. I don't care, Mark. I'm not going to try and talk you into him. He's my favorite player. I'm playing him. So the in my player pool thing here on here, it's not like, oh, I'm playing this guy, so you absolutely have to go out there and play him, right? You play the guys you want to, Mark. So like I said, I have no interest in trying to talk you into him, to be frank with you. He got mad about no cuts next year. You're talking about the things with the changes. Yeah, I don't like them. Thoughts on Charlie Hoffman? It's Charlie Hoffman. He's got a decent course history, but if you're telling me he's going to be substantially owned because of the course history, no, thank you. So I understand it, Chandler. He's got the track record, but he's still Charlie Hoffman in an elevated field. We have to temper our expectations, I would think. Bunker Boy says, how many underdog/prize pick slips do you make each day? Depends on how many props I'm taking. Could be anything between like 3 to 50 slips. So completely dependent on the slate. Thoughts on Lowry? I think he's all right. He's decent form, decent course fit. Now, the course history is the argument against him. So if you take a look at his course history, what is he, like 7,800 something? Yeah, 7,900. Missed cut, missed cut, missed cut. So that's an issue, but that's also why the ownership isn't outrageous. So you go down here, you can see, what is he? 9.9% owned at this point. Like, yeah, if he was coming in with good course history and the form, he'd be like 20% owned. So I think that you're taking a chance on that event history, but it makes sense, particularly with the form he's in. Yeah, those changes will suck. Yep. How did Zalatoris look today? Didn't see him. So have no information for you. Damn, I thought it started at 7:30. You're bad. You probably answered the question at the top. You're all good. All good, David, of course. George says, still Charlie Hoffman. Yep, it's still Charlie Hoffman. And I know you cannot do all six, but any lineup advice would be much appreciated. So yeah, I'm not going to go through players, Mark, right? That's just, I'm not going to make your lineup for you, but it depends on what contest you're entering. So you ask for lineup advice. It depends on what contest, right? If it's a GPP, cash entry, single entry, 2 to 3 max, that's just, we're going to go over some lineup building towards the end, as we always do here in the channel, but that's just way too generalistic of a question. If you make it more specific, I can help you out. Matt says, thoughts on Taylor Pendrith, 6,900. I like him, but I don't want to talk about him too much because he might get steamed a little bit, right? It's Taylor Pendrith. He's a top quality player. He could be an 8K range golfer in this field if he was coming in with form. I just hope that no one else plays him. But I know that people are. He's a solid player. People aren't stupid. So I like him there, Matt. I just hope that other people don't. Andrew says top outright bets. So yeah, let's go over those. And then we're going to go through the top end range here. So in terms of my top bets, I've bet all of my core plays. So Rory McIlroy, right? Ended up betting. I bet Will Zalatoris, bet Sungjae Im, and I also bet Hideki Matsuyama, who we'll talk about Hideki in a little bit. Some injury concerns with Hideki. But outside of that, I also bet Jordan Spieth, and I also bet Ricky Fowler. So the Jordan Spieth bet, as you could tell, a little bit of a homer bet, but he's top 5 at this event before. He's only played here one time, right? And the form is a little bit better than I think people give him credit for. I heard multiple touts this week hear the name Jordan Spieth and just go, oh, he's dog shit, right? Well, when people start to say that about Jordan Spieth, it's typically when he pops off for a win. So I've bet those 6 players. I've debated adding a few others, but I don't know. That's probably enough names, right? When I'm betting 4 guys towards the top of the board, it's hard to really fit in like 7 or 8 names when I'm spending the amount that I am to take the guys up there. So I'm probably going to stick with those. But that's what I've got right now. Higo or Riley? Riley for sure. Riley's just lower owned. Higo had a good week last week, but I think we have to remember that it was the Honda Classic, right? I mean, you're talking about one of the worst fields in all of the PGA Tour. So what, his top 25 finish last week? I don't really look at that too much. Just like the top 10 from Lowry, like it was a top 10 in a Corn Ferry Tour field. Like congrats. Chris Kirk winning, right? In a Corn Ferry Tour field. Like congrats. Like I love the Honda Classic. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not trying to talk shit about it too much. I love going to it. I love seeing the golf course, but the finishes don't matter. Like Eric Cole, second place. Great, right? We took advantage of him. We won money on DFS last week. I don't think he's like some good player now. Like I don't look at Eric Cole as like, oh, he's an elite tier rookie now. Like there are some slapdick touts out there, by the way, that are like calling Eric Cole a great play this week. Like you're a fucking bozo. He was $6,900 in the Honda Classic field at 3% ownership, and you didn't play him. And just because he had a good week last week, now you're going to tell me you're going to play Eric Cole at like 8% at like 1,000. Like, shut the fuck up. You have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. So, and by the way, there are some big touts saying that. And if your tout is saying that, he's an absolute pennywise bozo. Has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And again, I'm the fucking Eric Cole whisperer, right? I told you guys to play him last week, was very adamant about that. Guys like Pat Mayo, I can tell, stole my pick last week, by the way. There were other touts out there I can tell very conveniently on Wednesday, loved Eric Cole, right? I wonder where they got that from. I wonder, you just looked at your model and you figured that one out, huh? Yeah, my ass. Either way, if you think that you're going to chase that performance and get paid off, then no, don't. I would not go that way. Rant aside, I had to have that rant at some point. How many of the top 10 are you fully fading? You can actually see on here exactly who I'm playing. So let's see. Of the top 10, like 4 of them. So that includes Patrick Cantlay, which I believe is your number 10 player right there. So 4 of those top 10. And they tend to be some of the higher owned players, right? I think the lowest owned one here is Max Homa here at like 16%. Pretty much I'm playing like half the guys, I'm fading the other half. So that's the idea. Kirk won't win 2 in a row. Yeah, fade for sure. I don't think he's a fade for sure. He can still play well. His course history is ridiculous around here, but to look at that finish and think that it's like actually a true win is you're lying to yourself. Do you know anything about Thurston Lawrence? I know that he's an absolute stud, that's for sure. And boom, you drop the F bombs. Good for you. Well, hey, if you're a snowflake, you can't take some F bombs and get the hell out of here. I don't care. What's going on, Tom? Let Mayo know. Yep. And all these touts, like, you figured that out last second. Like sure, dude. Your moronic ass who's never won on DFS like the last 4 years is like self-admittedly one of the worst players in the world. You definitely found Eric Cole on your own. I'm for sure about that. You're right about Mayo. He did steal it. I'm almost positive. Tom says, I hate when other people steal picks and play them as their own. Yep. And you were absolutely the first time, Cole. How do I know? Because you watch all the shows. You said it yourself. There you go, Tom. Again, it's not even speculative. Like, when somebody that I look at as like a simpleton in the DFS space goes out there and like just somehow finds my picks, like I know how they got it. It's just, it's funny when they use the same type of arguments as I do too for the picks and think that it's slick. Anyways, that aside, let's go through this top end of the board. So John Rahm, I'm not playing because of what I saw today, but he's won 3 of his last 5 starts. Like play John Rahm if you want to. I understand it. I like Scotty Scheffler here, mostly because I think he's going to be even lower owned because of this AM stuff. He's going off early. He's going to be in that PM wave there on Friday. And if people are going to talk themselves out of an excellent wind player because of maybe like a half a stroke advantage, then sure, I'll take him, right? Maybe rather than 17% owned, maybe he ends up closer to 15% because of some of that wave advantage stuff. So I like Scotty Scheffler, still like Rory, right? He's in the PM wave. But JT, another AM guy that I'm taking, another player that I think is going to be steamed down because of some of the wind stuff. And if you didn't see over there for the Seminole Pro member, he won that by 4 strokes. And he won the Pro-Am today. This is not a typo, okay? He won the Pro-Am today by 6 strokes. His group, and it's a group of effort, right? It's a scramble. So take it with a grain of salt, right? It's not like it was all Justin Thomas getting this done. I believe their handicap also comes into the pictures, right? So if one of your members roll low handicap, right, you're going to get an advantage there. But he won by 6 strokes. Everyone else was like 8, 9 under par. His group shot, I believe, a 52. He shot like 20 under par or something like that. And the next best score, I believe, was Rory's group, believe it or not, that shot like 14 under par. So I think that's maybe the member guest, right, was one thing, but he went out there, won the Pro-Am too. Maybe he's just playing some damn good golf. So I liked him anyways going into the week, right? Has the around the green game that I'm looking for. But after those recent performances, it's almost like a sign to me to play him. So I'm playing him. Will Zalatoris, I'm still on. He's AM wave, unfortunately. Tony Finau and Xander Schauffele. Now, I wasn't huge on these two before I saw the weather advantage, but because they are PM AM, I'm going to stack them in a little bit more than I was before. I was probably going to play a Tony Finau or Xander Schauffele, but because of the way that the weather's shaping up, I am going to play both of them. So they're not my favorite plays. They're not going to be my highest leveraged plays in terms of their ownership, but still guys that I'm jamming in. I don't love Patrick Cantlay. If you want to see the video on that, I did a whole video on my fades. He just doesn't play in Florida very often. Doesn't play on Bermuda grass particularly well. Has one top 5 finish in his career on Bermuda grass. So I'm staying away. Sungjae, another AM golfer, but I'm still going to play him, right? I'm just hoping the ownership goes down, right? I mean, if we're getting like a half a stroke advantage and people are really jamming in those PM AM guys, I mean, you might see a 2-3% difference in terms of ownership on guys like a Sungjae, a Will Zalatoris that we talked about, which honestly would make them an even better play, right? And I'm sure they're playing from half a stroke behind. Let's ride. It's a 4-round tournament, right? Weather changes. These meteorologists are wrong a lot more than they're right out there. So if ownership's going to change drastically because of that, I think playing the other side of that's not a horrible idea whatsoever. Cameron Young, another AM guy I'm getting to. Jason Day, I'm fading because of ownership. The Jordan Spieth thing, we'll just skip over it. You guys know I'm playing Jordan Spieth. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody out there, but I do think it's a decent course fit for what it's worth. Hideki, let's talk about the injury. So he reportedly was having some type of back concern yesterday. It might have been a neck concern. I don't know at this point, right? It's a different thing every week with Hideki Matsuyama. But he played the Pro-Am today, and he hit balls after his round. So I try to go off of what I can actually see and judge as opposed to other people's words about it, particularly when it's people looking at a translated interview of Hideki Matsuyama. And if you didn't know, guys, when you translate a language like Japanese or Chinese to English, there's a lot that is lost in translation, right? So people are looking at these transcripts, right, that are translated to English, and it looks horrible. He was like, "Oh, I have neck pain. I can't swing hard. I should swing fast," or something like that. Like it sounded wrong, right? Because it was lost in translation. Who knows what the hell he actually said? Like legitimately, as somebody that's taken 4 foreign languages, I'm fluent in 3 languages. There's so much lost in translation that unless you actually speak Japanese, I really don't want to hear it there. So the guys that are typing everything into Google Translate and doing that, like, sure, like clearly something's going on with the back. Like we know that, but we don't know how bad it is. And the only evidence that I have in front of me that I can tangibly see was him playing today and him looking just fine. So I'm playing him. I think that a lot of this narrative based stuff, a lot of this injury based stuff is overblown. There are times when it pans out to be true, right? Hideki could withdraw tomorrow, right? He has something going on with the back, but he could very well go out there and nearly win the golf tournament like Xander did a few weeks ago. And I would feel like an absolute fool. I feel like an absolute sheep if I end up fading Hideki here and he goes out there and smashes, particularly as a part of the PM wave. Sam Burns, I'm playing. Love Sam Burns on Bermuda. You give me Sam Burns on Bermuda grass, I can guarantee you I'm playing him every single time. There will not be a time that I'm fading him on Bermuda. Be playing Billy Ho, be playing Corey Connors, that's for sure. In this top end of the 7K range, even this middle part of the 7K range, I think it's pretty easy to make lineups this week. To be quite frank with you, there's guys that I think are just mispriced, guys that are worse players than their peers, and it's not particularly close. So in this middle tier range, I'm taking the guys that belong, the guys that I think are these high tier players. If they're a good course fit, better, right? If they're low owned, better, sure. But like, just to give you an example, like Nick Taylor is way overpriced here. Let's see, Bo Hostler, Taylor Moore, even Russell Henley in this kind of field, way overpriced. Let's see, Wyndham Clark, way overpriced. Justin Rose, I know he had the win there. Right? Outside of that, has been pretty dog shit though. Way overpriced. I mean, I could keep going down here. Sam Ryder, overpriced. Sepp Straka, overpriced. Patrick Rogers, overpriced. Eric Cole, we already talked about that. Mega overpriced, mega overowned. I mean, even down here to the guys like Danny Willett, Davis Thompson, like Francesco Molinari, maybe one of the more egregiously priced plays on the slate. There are guys in this range that legitimately fit in, and guys that are just most overpriced pieces of shit that I've seen in a long time. So I don't know, this 7K range, we can talk about a few names if you guys want to, but there's not really that much of a rhyme or reason for me playing guys here other than they're just good players. Like they actually make sense. Like Moronk, Noren, Dietrich, Harmon, right? Like they should be at $7,200 in this field, right? There are guys that clearly shouldn't be in the bottom end of the 7K range. I like Luke List for whatever reason. He finds a way to gain on these greens. Lucas Herbert, he's been playing some sneaky good golf over the last month, so I'm getting there. Keegan Bradley likes windy conditions. He's played about this course before. Adam Scott, you've seen him have success at the Genesis, another really difficult track with tricky greens. Similar kind of test to what you get this week at the API. I don't know. The 7K range to me this week is as easy as it gets. I mean, typically there's guys that I have to choose between, real chalky guys that you're going to have to avoid, but it looks like the highest owned player here, right? Keegan Bradley's 10.7%. You have 10.5% on Tommy Fleetwood. You don't have those 15, 20% owned players this week. And if that's going to be the case, just take the guys you like the most. I mean, I guess Kirk, right, is 11.6% owned. Keith Mitchell at the top end of this range, right, he's at $8,000 flat, is 12.5% owned. But last week, right, we had guys that were 15 to 20% owned galore, right? Tons of them. It's a lot more spread out this week, which means if there are guys that you like, just play them, right? There's not going to be that piece of 20% mega chalk that you have to fade, which simplifies the process, I would say, down there in the 7K range. Let's go ahead, catch up on chat. Let's see what's going on. Then we'll go through the 8K range there. Sorry, I get the 6K range. We're going backwards, right? We're going down the board. We'll go to the 6K range next. Hosni says, thoughts on Sig, Baddeley, and Alexander. So if I had to choose one of the three, I'd probably go with Baddeley just based on his recent form. But I'm okay with all three. I'm not the biggest Alexander fan. I think that, in weaker field events, he's a pretty good value play, but in an elite tier event, probably asking quite a bit from him. So I would stick to the first two. I slightly prefer Baddeley over Sig. Tom says, anyways, thank you for the great info. Of course, it's a bonus that you're Florida golf. You live in the Orlando area and it's a different animal. So yeah, South Florida, even to mid Florida, I think is a different animal. South Florida, a little bit more windy than what you get up here in Orlando. But yeah, absolutely. Love bringing you the info. Rami says, at the beginning of the stream, you said Rom, who looked horrible. Yeah, it was Rom. He looked horrible on the range. And that could change, right? Like he could have just been working on a specific type of shot that he couldn't hit, but he was in his own head. That was clear enough. He was raging out there like a COD player that just got killed in Call of Duty. George says, is Webb done? No idea. He looked decent in the last 2 weeks, so I wouldn't say that. Matt says, is the weather enough to stack every lineup PMM? No. Matt, and go back to the beginning. I actually go over it in detail. No, it's not. I will stand behind that hill like anything. No, I would not only stack the PMA. Absolutely not. 20 plus mile an hour winds on Friday PM. How heavy is the pivot here? Check out the early part of the stream. It's going to be windy all day, not just in the PM wave. Waiting for projections for the PR Open. Yeah, I'm not even watching that shit. And I'm definitely not doing projections for them. Nick says, Molinari minus 110 to miss the cut. The issue I have with that, Nick, is that there's only 120 players. It's the top 65 in ties. And he's definitely a lower half player, but I don't think he's like a lower third player, right? He's probably like 40th, 45th percentile in this kind of field. Certainly the pricing indicates that, Nick. So I would avoid that. I think that's a pretty fair number. Todd says, Seamus Power, decent play. I think so. And what restaurant is the steaks tonight? It's a Capital Grill. So we'll be going to a pretty nice restaurant tonight. All right, let's go in here to the 6K range. If you have any questions on these value tier plays, feel free to go ahead and fire them. Well, after this, we're going to go through some lineup construction notes, then our prop preview at the end. So in terms of your 6K options, I'm trying to take a little bit more of a look at event history. So that's what's getting me to guys like Joel Damon. I would say Christian Bezainhood at $7,100 is another one of those course history plays. Alex Smalley played well here last year. I mean, even guys like Rio, right? Decent course history, does have 1 DQ. Let's see. What did Davis Riley do here last year? Just out of curiosity. I'm not playing him for course history reasons, but yeah, missed the cut here last year. Down here at the bottom end range, just take guys that you think have upside. Like there's going to be plenty that missed the cut. Like Hayne Buckley, I'm taking Mackenzie Hughes. But they bring plenty of missed cut equity to the table. So it's not like I'm counting on them to be a cut maker. You're just looking for the players that when they actually make cuts can do something with it, right? In an elevated field, you need somebody that can gain 10, 15 strokes to the field to finish in the top 10, top 15. And to take down a GPP, that's what you're going to need. So let's see, Ludwig Audberg. He's a name, right? Number 1 amateur in the world, plays at Texas Tech currently. Like it's these type of guys, right? I'm taking chances on guys with upside. Grayson Sigg, a player I'm getting to. Matthew Neesmith. Seems to like the 4 to swing down here. Thurston Lawrence, $6,100. Troy Merritt, right? $6,000 right down there at the bare minimum. I'm taking guys that have upside that have posted those top 10 finishes before, at least over the last 3-4 months. And that more importantly, or at least decent course fits. Like Thurston Lawrence, pretty damn good wind player. So believe it or not, they're over there on the DP World Tour. He's kind of known for that. So that's why I like getting there. Troy Merritt, he made the cut here last year. Now he finished in last place of the guys that made the cut, but still, right? If you can get a guy through the cut at $6,000, you're feeling pretty good about it, right? Matthew Neesmith, right? Ball striking has been decent, hasn't made a bunch of cuts of late, but if you look at a longer term sample size, a much better player than these metrics indicate. So just down low, avoid the guys that are just way higher owned than they should be. Like in terms of chalk, like Ben Taylor, right, getting a little bit of ownership, but he's still only 3% owned. I believe the highest owned guy in this range might be like Ben Griffin, who's only 4.7. I guess Justin Suh, right, and guys like Taylor Pendrith, right, 5.8%. You're getting a little bit more ownership, but there's not that 10% guy, that 15% owned guy there in the 6K range that you just have to auto fade. So let's say you really like Ben Griffin this week, right? Well, then play him, right? Makes sense, right? He's only 5% owned. You really like a Justin Suh this week. I don't really like Justin Suh, but he's 2.5% owned, right? Like, sure, he's higher owned than some of the guys around him, but because of how strong the field is, how deep the field is, and how soft the pricing is, there's not going to be anybody that's just like mega chalk down here in this range. Let's go ahead, catch up on chat, then hop into lineup construction, see what's going on. Thoughts on Minwoo Lee? Love him this week. Last week, let some people down, right? Still made the cut, so wasn't a horrible play by any means. but people were expecting a lot more at that price tag. And now that he's in the 7K range, he's only 6% owned. Like, yeah, I'm buying in on Minwoo. He's a high upside player, has a bunch of top 20 finishes in a row in the DP World Tour. One of the better plays, in my opinion, on the entire slate, especially considering that he's in the 7K range and was in the 9K range last week. Certainly a different field, but in terms of talent level, he's a top of the 7K range kind of golfer. So let's go ahead, bring up DraftKings now. We're going to go through a few lineup notes. I'm trying to build some lineups. So let's bring up DraftKings. There we go. And I see a question out of the corner of my eye, so let's go over it. Todd asked about Mackenzie Hughes. So yeah, for that, I'll also direct you to my value plays video. I talk about whole 3-4 minute argument on why you should play Mackenzie Hughes, but he tends to play well under difficult conditions. I'm thinking US Open, other major championships. So I'm getting there. He has the short game you're looking for. He's got the added driving distance over the last year that you're looking for. So I think he's a decent play. Play all the South Korea players. Thank you later. I know somebody that would really like that idea. Good old Rajesh down there in chat. Yeah, you're not going to be the only one who does that. Thoughts on Ben Griffin? So yeah, Ben Griffin, he's in decent form. I do think that he's going to get a little bit more attention than his peers, but like I just said, no one's mega chalk. So if you like Ben Griffin this week, you can play him. I just preferred him last week, and for some of the other golf tournaments where he had weaker fields, he has upside clearly. But I just think you're getting him at the wrong time, right? Like at this point, I've played Ben Griffin in weak field events, right? Trying to go after guys like at the RSM Classic. We played him at the Honda Classic, for example. I think he's got top 10, top 5 upside in those kind of fields. But in an elevated field event, I'm not so sold on it, to be quite frank with you. I mean, even looking at the recent form for Ben Griffin, so just to give you some actual metrics here, right? Top 21, cut, 31st, 32nd place finish. And those were weak field events, right? He couldn't crack the top 20 in the Honda Classic field, right? So why are we expecting him to do so in this field? That would be my question to you, right? Would be like, why do you think he's going to step up his game when the field gets tougher? But he's been playing well, right? So he's not an atrocious play. I wonder about the upside. I wonder about him actually getting into the optimal lineup. Let's go ahead and go through some lineup notes. So we're going to start with some cash plays. So if I was playing cash this week, I would probably stack the PM AM. So starting with a Rory McIlroy makes plenty of sense. Second man in, you might want to go Xander. Might want to go a little bit cheaper, right? And try and take some of these 8K guys. Just for the sake of this video, let's go ahead and take Xander for this lineup. In terms of your third man in, you're still looking for PM wave golfers. So let me go ahead and bring up my spreadsheet actually and make sure that we're taking all PM guys. So like a Corey Connors, I think is an excellent cash play this week. So let's go ahead and slot in Corey Connors there. Where you at, Corey? Go a little bit cheaper for this next pick. So let's find somebody between like 77 to 7,500 bucks. Adam Scott fits that mold. So does Keegan Bradley, right? And Keegan Bradley's also carrying some ownership, which is actually helpful going over here on the cash side. And for a fifth man in, what is Tommy Fleetwood's tee time? Let's check that. He's also a PM wave golfer. Let's go ahead and slot him into this lineup. So this would be a good way to start your cash build this week. All guys in the PM wave, which might get like a half a stroke to a stroke advantage, which for GPPs, right, I think it's helpful, but I don't think it's the end all be all. But when you're playing in cash, right, just trying to beat 50% of the field, you do probably want to lock in those points. So these are the core 5 that we'll go with for a cash lineup here. But you're looking for players with high floor, guys that have a decent track record around here. I believe all of these players check that box emphatically. And they're all decently popular plays too, right? They're guys that are going to be at least 5% owned, probably in cash closer to like 15, 20% owned across the board. If you want to take one pivot for your cash lineup, then by all means go out there and do so. But I don't think you have to. There are a few guys that make perfect sense here at $7,300 that you could round out this kind of lineup with. And if you wanted to leave a little bit of salary, maybe to differentiate yourself, there's plenty of guys even at $7,100 you could take as well. Now, in terms of a GPP kind of build, this is where we want to change it up, right? We want to start thinking a little bit more about game theory, ownership, all of that sort of fun stuff. So we're going to start this lineup with Rory once again, but I want to show you how different it looks across the board. So for a second man in, this is where I'm looking for leverage. And this is where we're going to put Jordan Spieth in there, right? He's going to be sub 5% owned. If you're looking for somebody that, just based on one player alone can give you that leverage, and Jordan Spieth might be that guy. Now, just because I want to go a little bit overboard here and kind of exaggerate the leverage, let's go ahead and put a Hideki Matsuyama in, who's also going to be ridiculously low owned. And let's put Billy Horschel in there too, right? If you were to start with these 4 players, you have unlimited leverage. Like, your product ownership is essentially going to be 0.0. You don't have to start this way though, right? If you took one of a Jordan Spieth, a Hideki, or Billy Horschel, you're probably unique enough, right? So let's just go ahead and put Billy Ho in there, right? Let's make this a little bit more chalky, maybe a little bit more realistic, right, for a large field GPP. Let's put Sanjay in there. Let's go ahead and let's find a little bit more chalky Cameron Young, right? So in this kind of lineup, we have 3 guys that are definitely garnering ownership in a Rory, Sanjay, and a Cam Young. But because we have that sub 3% owned play and a Billy Horschel in there, I'm more than okay with this lineup in a large field kind of contest. If you put Luke List in here, you rounded it off with somebody at $6,700, more than okay, no matter the field size, but this kind of lineup. Now, if you really wanted to take chalk, right? If you really wanted to push this here, let's make this chalkiest lineup you can make. And let's use Rory again, just for the sake of this, just to show you the different kind of lineups you can make with the same starting player. So let's put Rory in there. Let's put Cantlay. Let's just make this as chalky. Let's put Jason Day in there. And even in the 7K range, let's put Chris Kirk. If you start a lineup with these 4 players, you're going to have next to no ability to differentiate yourself, right? This is going to be duplicated 5, maybe even 10,000 times in this GPP that I'm playing in this week. So if you're going to try and build this, you're going to have to take 2 of the most pivots of all pivots that you could possibly think of. I'm talking Molinari level pivot, right? I'm talking, I don't even know, at $7,200. You'd probably have to leave salary on the table to make this a unique lineup. This is why you don't play these guys together, right? If you want to take 2 of them together, I'm okay with that. You have to put in some sort of pivot. So if you wanted to take, let's say, a Jordan Spieth in this kind of lineup, even let's say like a Corey Connors who's getting some ownership, this type of lineup I like infinitely more, right, than taking the 4 chalky guys up top. If you're going to take players that are going to be 15, 20% plus owned, I think you need to be taking guys that, not together. You can't be taking 4 of them together. Like if you're taking 2 together, just take them with 2 pivots and they can get away with it. 3 is probably where you're getting on the edge of having a solid pick. We'll go ahead and catch up on questions for DFS now. Then afterwards, we're going to hop into props. So if you have any prop questions, we'll hop into that here in a second. So where are we at? Matt says, what's good, Luke? A little late tonight. Have you touched on Hideki? I have. I'm not all that worried about it because he played in the Pro-Am today. Kitayama in English or Hughes in BDF is what we'll call him there. I would go with the second. I like Hughes and I like Fowler this week, so I would go with those 2. But those are both decent combinations. Todd says 1 line in a single entry. So you're either thinking Laird because of PM AM or now Lawrence AM PM. Well, the price. Well, what is Laird's price? Is he also like 6,100? 6,200, right? So $100 price difference there. Yeah, I do like Lawrence. I mean, the ownership difference, right? Laird is 0.1% lower owned than Thurston Lawrence. And I think at this stage of their career that Lawrence is probably the better player. So yeah, I would probably side towards that too, man, for sure. Thurston Lawrence and Scotty or Rory and Ben Taylor. I would go with the first combination. Both players are going to be lower owned. That's the main reason for that. They're AM guys, right? It's not ideal, but I'm definitely going to have lineups where I side that direction, but I'm going to have all 4. Tanner says, would you play Cantlay in cash along with Hughes? No, absolutely not. He's chalky this week, and I think he's a horrible play. He's never been good on Bermuda. He has 1 top 5 finish in his career on Bermuda grass. There's a reason why he doesn't play here. There's a reason why he misses the cut every single year at the Players' Championship. I would not, Tanner. He's highly owned, and I think that he's also a horrible play. Rory absolutely dominating, winning by 10. I hope so, Forbes. What's going on, brother? Hopefully you're having a good little Wednesday evening here. Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think he's going to go off. All right, let's go over to the prop side now. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and let's talk through Prize Picks, which has quite the board this week. And I have to say, in Underdog, they've got quite the board too. So in terms of your Prize Picks props, you've got, your normal categories, right? Strokes, birdies, pretty better matchups, and then greens and fairways. We hadn't had fairways for at least a few tournaments, so it's good to see that back. Greens regulation, it's good to see that back as well. But they're probably my least favorite categories for tomorrow. The pricing, it seems like they took a little bit more time on it to go out there and get it out. So perhaps that's why the pricing looks a little bit more fair. The fairway lines, they looked a little bit more receptive this year. I was going to try and take some unders, but it does look like they're not nearly as firm as what they were last year. So at this point, I think I'm going to stay away from greens and fairways. All the props that I've taken on Prize Picks are over there for strokes, birdies are better, and believe it or not, matchups. There are a few matchups that I like. If you want to ask questions about the greens regulation or the fairway props, by all means, feel free to go at it, but there's not anything that I'm really going ahead and trying to jam in at this point. In terms of your strokes props, there are a few props that I think have gone bumped up to favorable levels. So Jordan Spieth was at 71.5 before. I love his under at 72 now. At 71.5, Will Zalatoris, he was at 71 before. I like his under now. Even at the bottom of the board, like I was teasing this before, but like having Webb at 74 strokes, is he even on the board anymore? Yeah, he is, like 74 strokes right there, right? Charlie Hoffman, right, who has a crazy track record around here. Where's Hoffman at? Yeah, he's another guy at 74 strokes. I don't know who's taking all these overs for round one, but I vehemently disagree with whoever's doing that because the weather does not look bad, right? And if you look at the splits over the years, this course plays closer to 1 stroke over par during conditions like we're getting for Thursday. And if they get slightly better than what they're projecting for right now, sometimes this course plays like even par. Like you've seen that before. Like for rounds 1 and 2 at this event, when wind isn't a huge factor, there are guys that take it to 6, 7 under par. Like that's a regularity around this track. So I understand if it was super windy, like if you were looking at 20, 30 mile an hour wind gusts, like what we're getting there for Friday, Saturday, I would understand these guys being at 74 strokes, but I don't tomorrow, like not whatsoever. So I'm just going to keep those strokes props on there. A lot of those that I'm looking to add. If you didn't see the video I've already done this week, I do like the John Rahm over Shane Lowry a lot in terms of matchups. And I love this Rory McIlroy over Terrell Hatton as well. So both of those are props that I'm taking along with some of these other strokes props that I'm adding right now. In terms of underdog, they've had a lot of bumps at this point, but I think maybe the most intriguing props are these 3.5 bogey lines. So they have Corey Connors at 3.5 bogeys. They have Lowry at 3.5 bogeys. Where's Lowry? Yeah, 3.5 bogeys or worse. I'd be slamming some of these unders. And I talked about it during my video earlier in the week, but the average bogeys at this course under windy conditions, right, are 3.5 bogeys. We're getting better conditions tomorrow, and these are elite tier bogey avoiders, right? Shane Lowry, top 10 on tour last year in avoiding bogeys. Same thing with Corey Connors. So they're kind of no-brainer plays for me here too. So I know we did a whole video, right? I'm not going to regurgitate the entire video here on stream. More just going to focus on questions. But if you're going to take unders, like they have Jordan at 71 strokes, why wouldn't you take it over here in Prize Picks, right? He's at 72 strokes. Or Will Zalatoris, for example, right? Let's find his line here. Zalatoris, right? 70.5. He's at 71.5 for Prize Picks. So if you're going to take supportive stances, I think no doubt you want to do it on Prize Picks. And if you're looking to fade players, then you want to fade them on underdog, right? It's relatively straightforward there. You could even try to middle some of these plays, and I don't think it's the worst idea in human history, but I definitely prefer some of the supportive stances on Prize Picks. And if you're going to do any supportive stances on underdog, then maybe you take the bogeys or worse unders, because I think they're maybe... I mean, and it doesn't even make sense, right? Like they have it at 3.5 bogeys for some of these guys, but they have their strokes, lower than what they have there on Prize Picks. I don't really follow their logic, right? They think there's going to be more bogeys made, but also lower strokes by all these players. Like I have no idea what they're going with over there. Let's go ahead, see what's going on in terms of questions. Carson says, what do you think about Willie Z over birdies? So I'm assuming you're talking about on Prize Picks. Was he at 4 on both sites? Let's see. Where are you at, Xander? Not Xander. Will's Outdoors. He's at 4 there. He's at 4 on Prize Picks. I know that. I prefer the strokes line, right? Like 71.5 strokes. He shoots under par. He ends up hitting. I would prefer that. I would even prefer his birdie or better matchup against Sanjay M. So I'm okay with it. I think he projects for a slightly over there at 4, but I think there's other props you could take there. James says, how do you build single entries? It depends on my thought process, man. It's like any other lineup I'm making. there's lineups where I'm trying to get a ton of leverage to the field, just going with a dart throw. And there's times I'm a little bit more chalky. So perhaps I'll do a video on that, James, but you've got to be a little bit more specific about the question, at least to probably get what you're looking for, right? So maybe rephrase that, change it up a little bit. But if you're just talking about in general, it's like any other DFS lineup, except it's worth a little bit more money. So maybe I spend a little bit more time on my single entry lineups. But in terms of fundamental nature, I don't change my strategy. Like, I'm still trying to get leverage to the field. I know that in single entries, the chalk's probably going to be even chalkier than it is in other contests. So I know that if I'm taking some, sub 5% owned player, he might be sub 2% in that single entry. And you can kind of make your lineup accordingly, right? Because if you know somebody's going to be sub 2%, you can take more chalk in that lineup because that 2% player is going to wash a lot of that away. So it's just really complicated topic. Again, if you make it more specific, maybe it can help you out more. Why is Kisner topping the board for fairways? Because he hits a bunch of fairways. He's one of the elite fairway makers. So that's probably why. Damon says Simpson over 2.5 birdies you like. So 4 par 5s and 1 short par 4. Yeah, the par 5s are pretty long though. So for Webb, I'm not sure if he's going to be reaching them in 2, but pretty much anyone at 2.5 birdies, like, you'd be leaning over. Like the average for this course is 3.3. You're talking about below average players here, but also below average aggressiveness players towards the bottom of the board. But yeah, like, I mean, even Hoffman, Sepp, right? Like Harmon, like these are guys I'd take for the over. But I do have to warn you, right? There's a reason that these guys are there at 2.5 birdies. They're also some of the least aggressive players on tour. So I'm actually going to consider adding a few a little bit later on, but I think that the strokes, because they're getting bumped up like this, I think they're better plays. Like for Webb Simpson, for example, like 74 strokes, like sure, he can make a double bogey and screw himself, but unless he does so, like I think there's a lot more value on him shooting two over or better, right, than making 3 birdies. Because this scoring average tomorrow, I'm expecting to be right around even par. Jaden says, what would your favorite 2 props be on Prize Picks? The 2 from my video, man, these 2 matchups. But I don't know. They're all about the same hit rate. So I honestly don't have 2 favorites, but I guess it would be the 2 from the video. JT says, is Decky still in your cash core? Not in my cash core, no. I actually just went over my cash lineup here about a few minutes ago. Those 5 players, he was not in that cash core. So if you back up like 10 minutes, you'll see who I'm actually targeting in cash. He's not one of those players. But, and by the way, that core that I put out, JT, those aren't my top cash plays. Those are my top GPP plays. So those are not my cash core. Orlando Capital Grill is a martini bar. I highly recommend the coffee, rub, and mushroom sauce. Alrighty. That's good to know, man. Good to know about some of the locals. Yeah, the Capital Grill, they actually have them everywhere, right? There's one in Pittsburgh. There's one down there in South Florida. Very reliable. I like their lobster bisque. I like their steaks there. So I'll keep it in mind with the mushroom sauce, though. I'm not a big mushroom guy myself, but hey, if you say it's good, I have to give it a try. But that's all I've got, guys. I've got to get to that dinner I was talking about. If you have any questions for me and you're part of the Patreon, feel free to go ahead and ask in the Discord. I'll get those answered for you. But best of luck with all of your lineups this week. Any props that you guys are going with. We'll be doing streams for rounds 2 through 4. So I'll be out there in the course. I'll get home. I'll do my analysis. And I'm assuming sometime around like 8, maybe 9 p.m., we'll be going live for Showdown and for props for the weekend. So looking forward to that. Until then, guys, best of luck, like I said, with those lineups and those props. Make sure you smash that like button on the way out of here. I don't beg very often, right, for the likes, the engagement, and whatnot. So on your way out, right, hit the like button, do your good deed of the day there. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already, so you don't miss any of that content in the future. And let's get this cash this weekend, guys. I'm feeling a takedown, and hopefully we get a takedown in person. That'd be pretty sweet.